At the age of 16, our guest, Oz Aponte, was already off to a running start. He was running a martial arts school with over 100 students, not because he planned it, but because his teacher left and someone had to step up. That is the nature of our guest, Oz Aponte. Oz is a lifelong martial artist, a U.S. Army veteran, former professional dancer, author, and educator with a passion for helping others unlock their physical potential. From his early years running a martial arts school as a teenager in Puerto Rico, to leading soldiers in physical training during his Army career, to becoming a respected strength coach and a strong first instructor, Oz has consistently lived at the intersection of rigor, movement, and self-mastery. You'll find him today at Bird Rock Fit in La Jolla, California, or traveling across the western United States teaching strong first workshops. But what makes Oz unique isn't just his resume, it's the energy and philosophy he brings to training. He blends martial arts, discipline, neurological insights, and decades of hands-on coaching into a message that fitness should serve you for life, not just for the next workout. In this conversation, we dive into his early influences from uncles who taught him breakdancing and calisthenics to the moment he found himself leading over 100 students at just age 16. We'll explore his transition into the military, how he became the go-to leader for soldiers struggling with fitness, and why his approach to strength emphasizes neural efficiency and longevity over muscle size alone. Along the way, you'll hear why kettlebells, and especially the Turkish get-up, hold such a transformative power, and how Oz integrates tools like GA mechanics, breathwork, and neurological training to help people move better at every stage of life. So whether you're a weekend athlete, a coach, or just someone who's looking to keep moving well into your later years, get ready to learn from a man who truly practices what he teaches. Here is my conversation with Oz Aponte. Oz, welcome to the One Thing podcast. It's so great to be here with you today.
Adam, thank you for having me as a guest.
You're welcome. Yeah, I'm very excited to get into things with you today. So many things about your background fascinate me and your interest and your talent. So let's just get right into it, I guess. It'd be a great place to start off with hearing about your early start in martial arts. I mean, way back when you were 16, most 16-year-olds these days are sitting home playing video games. You were out there starting a martial arts school. Like, how did that happen?
This is a cool story because it's not that I raised my hand and said, hey, I want to do amazing things as a teenager. It was more a function of there was a need that occurred, and I'll explain how that happened. So I started at 13 years old. I started martial arts. I loved right away. It was a very organic transition from being a skater in my earlier years. I loved skateboarding, and I attended a martial arts class, thought it was fantastic, kept going with it. By the age of 16, we come upon a bump in the road, if you will. What happened was that the teacher of our school, his name is Victor Perez, Sifu Victor Perez, and what he had was this praying mantis kung fu school in my hometown of Kettleb, Puerto Rico. Now, he didn't live in that town. He lived in a different town. So he had to come in, travel a couple hours, and that got to be very challenging for him after several years of teaching there. And sadly, the school was closed. Now, at this point, I'm a brown belt. I'm leading the warm-ups in the school. I have a robust practice outside of the school because the school only was open on Mondays and Thursdays from 5:30 until 7. But the rest of the time, I was 100% into this. Meeting with my buddies at the park, at people's houses, at basketball courts, wherever we could find that there was a available space and safe space and we could use it. We were there, we were practicing. We bought pads, we were practicing our kicks, our punch techniques, forms, everything. So there was already a nucleus of what needed to happen here, right? It's okay, we have this guy that's really into it. He's willing to lead, and we have all these people that are willing to show up and learn. That got around town somehow. And there was this gentleman who was part of his homeowners association in a community where they had a community center, and it was available for things just precisely like this. Hey, who would like to come here and teach people how to juggle or act or sing or dance? It didn't matter. We were teaching people how to do praying mantis kung fu. And probably the first few months, it was just the nucleus, me and my friends. But within several months, we had a children's class, which was packed. The place was pretty big. In fact, I took a trip last summer, after many years away from home, and I drove right by that place in my hometown, and it was so emotional to see it because it looks old and they haven't really kept it up.
Yeah.
But it was a vibrant space. We had at least 20 children. We had an all women's class, and then we had an adult class that was open. And all in all, it was over 120 students throughout the life of that school.
Amazing. And was there something about your temperament that allowed you at such an early age to be a leader? Like, did you recognize that in yourself early on, or did other people recognize that in you?
I believe that it was a combination of both. And I can tell it with certainty that people saw that in me, but it seemed like they were certainly pushing me in certain directions, encouraging me to do certain things. And personally, I feel like I'm a very enthusiastic person, and I want to share things. So anytime I share, I learn something new, I want to tell you all about it. I'm sure you can already tell that, right? So when I started to learn martial arts and how powerful it was for me, the things that it did for me very quickly, as a teenager, I knew that feeling of being strong feels good. This feeling of being able feels really good. This feeling of being very flexible feels good. When I started to get interested in girls, I very quickly realized that being a martial artist was very good for that because I could get into dance very easily. So anytime they had a little ditty at school and they're like, hey, can any of the guys want to join this dance? I was like, I'll do it. And now you're surrounded with beautiful women all the time and stuff like that. So it was like this very organic thing that enhanced my life, my well-being physically, but also mentally. It improved my social situation in a way, right? Now I have more friends, more things that are available to me. So to me, it was pretty organic to kind of jump in.
That's great. So I want to dive a little bit deeper into this because you mentioned something offline about your uncles and sort of the connection they have to your journey. Can you share a little bit about that?
Absolutely. I love telling this story because my uncles were so awesome. So were my aunts too. I'm very close with that part of my family. So my uncles were very young when I was born. They were still teenagers. So they're out there roller skating, not blading, roller skating.
Yeah.
We had those old skateboards that kind of were plastic and they kind of bent a little bit. The real thin ones that look like a fit. We had those. There's a picture of me somewhere. My uncle is riding a bicycle, and he's got me in the middle of the bike holding onto the handlebars in my diaper and nothing else. He just ride it all around the neighborhood with me. So they were always teaching me this stuff. They taught me how to break dance. They taught me how to handstand. And Uncle Chemi, he taught me how to do one-arm push-ups at a very early young age, which is totally doable. If you have young kids, get them into calisthenics. It's very organic. They'll pick it up, and it'll be great for them.
That's really cool. So you went off to the military, and how did this shape you into your current calling?
Well, I remember one of the coolest things that happened when basic training can be a challenging thing. And I'll share this. When I went to basic, being from Puerto Rico, you study English every year from first grade until you graduate high school. You can read it. You have pretty good understanding of it. Regional accents are difficult to pick up, I think, for anyone, but especially if you're not a native speaker. But you can go to the movies and make out what they're saying. You can make out basic things in songs and things like that. Going from my homeland of Puerto Rico and getting dropped off in Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri, with all these sergeants, that some of which were from the South, some of them from different places, which their accents were difficult for me to discern, right? And then you add to that the atmosphere that's there. It's all about that intimidation and breaking you down so they can build you back up. It was really, really challenging, but something happened. We took our first physical fitness test, and I did a lot of push-ups in that test. I did, I think, something like 82 push-ups on my first physical fitness test in the Army. And my drill sergeant pulled me in front of the formation after the test and shook my hand because I could do more push-ups than he could. And that was a really strong indication and urging. This feels good to be up here leading other men. It was something that I just kind of wanted to do. And throughout my entire military career, everywhere that I went, I was always tasked with that. Sergeant Aponte, or at the beginning, Private Aponte, do you want to lead PT, which is physical training? And I was always like, absolutely, let's do it. So pretty much the entire 6.5 years that I was in the military, I was always the guy that led PT. And there was another part to this that was really cool. At a certain point, it became like a thing. Hey, we have this guy. He's a really good soldier, but he cannot pass his physical fitness test. Or we have this guy, he can pass the test, but he cannot pass the height and weight standards that the Army had, which were really old-fashioned and trippy. Sometimes you had a guy that was really jacked. He would not pass them because by the test standards, he was obese. But what the guy was like super strong and fit, you know? And so I started to get tapped to help those people a lot. Hey, can you help this guy lose weight? Can you help this guy pass a P test? What is it? The push-ups, the sit-ups, the running, whatever. And I got really good at that. I developed this reputation for being the person to go to if you needed to pass something that at the moment you can't do. And of course, that's a really valuable thing to have in any unit, in military unit. And all of those things, when you combine them, it was, the recognition that I got from my peers, my subordinates, my superiors, but also it was, again, you keep mentioning, and I think you're correct. It's like, there's like this path that I was on that it seemed to be very organic, and I never really thought, this is what I want to do. But it ended up happening, it ended up being what I did do, and it turned out really great for me.
Yeah. So now you've been teaching strength training for over 2 decades, and I'd like to break down a few words for people because I think this is really helpful. Strength versus physical fitness versus conditioning. How can we understand those words, and do they have individual meanings, or are they all the same thing?
I think they absolutely have different meanings, and I think that it depends on the level of how much bandwidth the person has to consume this kind of knowledge, right? I have clients that want to learn everything that I have to teach them, right? They want to learn the complexities of the vestibular system and how their gait mechanics affect their physical well-being, how their past injuries affect where they are now, all of it. And I have people that come to me and simply want to get through a workout in peace and quiet and be left alone. They don't want any of this other hoopla, right? And as a coach, I have to be considerate that it's okay. That's where they're at, and I have to be respectful of that. It's in my DNA to want to tell these people everything about it. If you ask me, we just met at the store and we realized we have similar interests. I think those terms are absolutely important. If you're talking about strength, you're talking about the body's ability, and I'm going to take a step back, the nervous system's ability to command such strength. And then you have these physical mechanisms that are going to make that happen through action potentials and muscles contracting and all this kind of cool stuff. But it is different than, for example, somebody who's very well conditioned. And we don't have to look any further than look at the Olympics to see that. Sometimes we see athletes that are at the very of strength and power, or maybe just strength, or maybe just power. And then on the other side, we have somebody who has incredible conditioning, but would not be considered a strong athlete. They have strength that is adequate for their sport, but not for the other thing. How I relate that to the people that I work with is that somewhere in there, there's a place where what you want and what you need and what you can do and comes together, coalesces with these definitions. Let's find where that is and let's try to get you there if you're already there. You know what I mean? This is how I would present it to people, because again, not everyone that I work with wants to know the difference or cares or needs to know it, right?
Right. That makes sense. So you mentioned something that's very fresh and interesting that I don't think most people look at through the same lens. And, certainly when I was introduced to strength training, I mean, it was Arnold Schwarzenegger and those guys, and all you could think about was, how do you build muscle?
Yeah.
How do you train to build the biggest muscles, strongest muscles? But you've mentioned that your strength training goes through the lens of neurologic training. And that's very interesting. And I'd love to hear what that looks like in practice and what that means and how we can understand that.
Yeah. Yeah. I want everyone to imagine a tiny athlete that is super strong, such as a gymnast, a female gymnast in the 1980s from somewhere in Eastern Europe or something, or Russia or something like that. Or some of our own, right? They were tiny, but they were powerful. They were full of strength. Also, in modern times, we can look at Cirque du Soleil performers. Oh my God. They are the embodiment. Yes, you need your muscles to produce certain forces on the bones so that we can move them and adopt different postures. However, the size is not as important as people think. If you have a pattern that you've been working on for actually decades, and you have it down to such a degree that when you call upon that pattern, your efficiency to produce that movement is such that you are in the top 1% in the world, the strength that you can produce in that pattern is vastly superior to any guy walking down the street that looks super big. Unless that guy has spent 10,000 or 10 years or a ton of hours working on that specific pattern. Another person that we can look at is somebody like Bruce Lee, right? He was tiny. He was 150 or 30 pounds, and he was 5'6", but he could produce a lot of power. In the UFC, somebody like, I don't know if you are into mixed martial arts, but there's a guy named Demetrius Johnson who was incredibly strong and powerful. And he's not, and I don't think anybody, if they saw him in street clothes, would be like, oh, that guy is really big and strong. So yes, if you increase the size of your muscle, you're going to be stronger. That's true. But that's not the only mechanism. Things like neural drive and pattern recognition and adaptation, myelination, the way that we conduct that signal to the muscle can become highly insulated through practice. And anytime we, especially when we stretch out our practice over a long period of time, there's always the potential to create these adaptations that are incredibly effective for the performance of the movement, and they can show strength at a world-class level, but you don't necessarily see big muscles attached to them.
Yeah. So going into that a little bit more, when you're doing training through a neurologic lens, is it a different set of exercises than you would typically see in a standard strength and conditioning gym? Is it a different mindset? Is it a different way of connecting movement? How does that look?
I think at a Monday morning protocol level, if somebody were to listen to this and go try to do it Monday morning, it has to do with the organization of the training. If we practice something in a manner which leaves your nervous system fresh to practice more frequently, now what you're doing is you're working on those neurological mechanisms more directly. Now you're applying the SET principle, the specific adaptation to impose demand. The one-arm push-ups is a good example of that. When I practice my one-arm push-ups, I'm not doing 3 sets of 10. I may go in there and do singles. My general guideline is usually between 3 reps and 15 reps for the session. Now you go, is that enough? Well, it is enough now at this stage of my training because this is what I'm doing now. And the level of tension that I'm producing and the magnitude of it, full body strength, it's not just one muscle. You may think it must be the upper body thing. But in one-arm push-ups, you're really using your whole body. Doing less is better. Now I can do it more frequently, and those neural mechanisms can get activated. They can get activated in a way that is going to lead to strength gains, not to muscle gain per se. If you're thinking about weights, the same principle applies. If you study weightlifting, Olympic weightlifting, you will see that as those athletes peak and they get to that performance level, their repetition schemes are very low. They're not doing a whole lot of volume. One of the basic secrets and practical things that anybody can do in order to pursue strength is to do a lot less volume with really high quality and then do it more frequently. Because now your nervous system and your physiology is not getting so taxed that you need 3 or 4 days to recover from it. Another benefit of this is that if you have a very demanding lifestyle, whether it comes from your job, your family, not having time, whatever it may be, a strategy like this can lead to a lot of progress and well-being with a minimal investment. So it becomes a really useful thing to understand and do on the regular.
That's golden. And getting ready for this podcast, I started applying some of the things I know that you teach and kind of poking through some of things I've read that you've written about. And I just did some different experiments with my own training this last week. And one of the principles was leaving some in the tank, like we're just talking about.
Yeah.
Typically, when I go in for a workout, it's go all out and exhaust yourself. That's a good workout. And then, yes, as I get older and older and older, the recovery of that is so much less. But This week, I just kind of doubled down on that. Started training with that in mind and looking at my heart rate variability and looking at my recovery. And it was dramatically different, and it felt like going to the gym the next day and the next day versus, oh, I'm sore. Let's see when I can get back there. So maybe you can comment on that.
Absolutely. So that's brilliant. I think there's a lot of reasons why we may want to train in that manner. I always think about the military. I think about first responders, because if you depend on your physical skill, on your strength, on your ability to perform, and you are always sore from your job, from your workouts, that's not a good combination.
Yeah.
Right? I've been working with police officers and with firemen. And I always tell them, like, if you're sore and you need to go chase a bad guy or put out a fire, that's not a great situation for you, right?
Right.
So that would be in general for us as well. I think the desire to go really hard comes a couple of different places. I think there's an element of Western mentality there, right? And I think when we look at more the Eastern philosophies, everything is more about the longevity and kind of, let's do this for a lifetime, not the next month, right? But here we're all about challenges and what can we do for the next 6 weeks, and let's go really hard and all that stuff. And there's nothing wrong with that. I think there's a place and a time for that. We just cannot live in that redlining state all the time, because we're going to break the car down, right? The problem with the car, that you can replace the car, but you cannot replace whatever you're going to do to your body. Now, I know that we're very resilient and we can bounce back from a lot of things, but as you mentioned, and I am, again, very cognizant of this because of my own experience, it gets harder to bounce back the older we get. And if we want to continue to have this vibrant life, that I want to be able to dance and hike and travel and do all these things, then I have to be a little bit more with the way that I go about my workouts. And it's the philosophy that I try to share with my students and when I teach my workshops and things like that. You mentioned that, leave one in the tank, right? That I personally kind of became aware of that idea from the teachings of Hardstyle, Strong First, and Pavel. Don't always have to do that last one. I think I'd rather say I could have done one more than to say I shouldn't have done that last one.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? That's served me very well so far.
Yeah, that's very wise. I think that message needs to be heard in more ways than one. And that could be a podcast in itself, because that philosophy is applicable to so many different parts of life. One of the things that you've been up to recently is the Enter the Kettlebell program. And can you talk about that and what that was and the consistency it required and the depth of all that you engaged with that program?
Just a quick break from our discussion to talk about something that can truly make a difference in your daily life. That's the Pulsetto device. I've teamed up with them as an affiliate sponsor, and I'm excited to share some information about them, and we'll get right back to the program. We all face stress, restless nights, and those moments of anxiety. But what if there is a simple way to find more calm and happiness? That is where Pulsetto comes in. If you've listened to this podcast or followed my blog or writing, you know that I'm a big advocate for vagus nerve balance, vagus nerve stimulation, and training heart rate variability. That's where Pulsetto comes in. It's a vagus nerve stimulation device. I've been so impressed with what they're doing, and the results speak for themselves. Imagine these results: 28% lower stress levels, an 18% improvement in sleep quality, a 26% reduction in anxiety, a 22% happiness boost, and also 86% of their users felt calmer and less stress after using it. Those are real benefits, and it's a drug-free device. If you're looking to improve your well-being and find a greater sense of calm, I encourage you to check out Pulsetto. There is a discount link in the show notes. By doing this, not only will you improve your health, but you'll also support the podcast. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. And now back to the program.
Absolutely. So this program was created, in my opinion, this is probably the most elegant program that has ever been put on paper. When I think about all the things that I've done, and I've done things that require a lot of time and a lot of volume and a lot of effort, all the way down to things that are even more minimalistic than this particular program. This is usually my favorite and the one that I keep coming back over the years because it always pays dividends. So if you look at the program, you will see that there are 3 mandatory days on this program. And you have a very limited set of skills that you're going to work on. You're going to work on your kettlebell swing. You're going to work on your kettlebell snatch, your kettlebell clean and press. And that's basically it. Now, there are some options to the program, right? If you just do that, I think you're going to be okay. Is that going to be okay forever? No, right? At some point, it's going to start to need some other things injected in there. But if you have the time in this particular setup, you have a couple variety days in which you can do double front squats or Turkish get-ups or even something unrelated like deadlifts or something like that. And there are guidance to all of that. It usually falls in the same place that we talked about earlier in terms of less is more. Don't overdo it. Just stay fresh. Make sure that you walk away with that one in the tank and you can still do it tomorrow if you needed to, and you can go chase the bad guy if you need to, right? But at the time when I was doing this program, when I did it for that period of 3 years, I was also dancing, contemporary dance, like modern dance. So I really wanted to learn as much technique as I could. I wanted to train as much as I could, but I also had to take company class and perform and work and live and go out and have a social life. So when you start to put all these balls in the air, you quickly realize that the more condensed your strength training can be, at least for me at that point, that was of huge value. But I didn't feel I was putting or leaving anything on the table. I felt strong for the activities that I was doing at the time. Was I going to win a national strength championship of some sort? No, of course not. But for a dancer, I was feeling really good. Mm-hmm. And I didn't have any injuries during that time. Thank God. I feel great. I'm going to dance class and I'm working out 3 times a week and I'm going to school and I'm working as a personal trainer. And I just felt awesome. So when I put all those things together, there was so much value in there. I was getting the results I wanted. I was not injured. My performance in my other endeavors was great. And I was enjoying it. It was fun. This is awesome. Why not do this? And I just kept going and going and going. And to be honest, not honest, but rather clear, there were times when I had to kind of step away from it for a week or 2 or something like that, right? If I traveled with the company, which we did several times, I couldn't bring a kettlebell with me. That's crazy. But I would do my body weight skills. But it was still in that wheelhouse of the hard style strong first. Strength is a skill. So I'm really working on my skill of strength. The tool doesn't matter. If I need to put down my kettlebell for a couple of weeks, everything's going to be all right. I'll do my one-arm push-ups. I'll do my single leg squats. I'll do my pull-ups if it's available. And then when I come back, everything's going to be good. And that utility is really what had me loving it, and that why I did it for so long.
Yeah, so the kettlebell seems to me the premier functional training tool. I remember back in, the early 2000s, functional training was a big thing, and you'd see all these different circuits and workouts with all these people doing pattern movements that were supposedly functional in it. You'd see hundreds of different exercise. One of the things that's really interesting about kettlebell is in just an assortment of a condensed amount of exercises, you cover so many functional patterns. Can you explain that to the listeners, just why kettlebell fits that realm?
Of course. We've talked already about how not everyone's going to be in the same clubs or the same group. If I get someone who wants to come in and they're, listen, Oz, I really appreciate your enthusiasm for all this stuff, but I want to do as little as possible. I just want to be able to play with my grandchildren and take every once in a while. Excellent. We can use some of the terminology that you used in the question. There are basic patterns that we can address: squatting, hinging, pressing, and pulling in various angles, horizontal, vertical, somewhere in the middle, 45 degrees, and all kinds of that. You have carrying, you have pushing, pulling into a sled. So can I find some patterns in that I can work with grandma, that I can get her to be functional for her life, what she wants to do? She wants to play with her grandchildren and take trips. Yes, the answer is yes, I can do that. And I don't need a bunch of exercises to do that. Commitment every week, right? Now, if I have somebody, for say, a wrestler. Now, wrestlers have a much greater demand on the things that they need to do, that demands on their physiology, their body, their neurology. What are we going to do? So then I can draw more from that kettlebell pot. So swings and get-ups, super basic. Let's say grandma's really limited with her balance. Okay, well, now I'm going to tap into my neurological training and work with her with vestibular drills until I know that she's really solid with the balance, and I'll stick with the basic patterns, just like push, pull, hinge, squat, maybe a little pulling on the sled. If she's coming up on a trip to Europe and there's going to be a lot of steps, maybe I'll have her doing some stepping, loaded steps perhaps, to kind of load her body a little bit more. Analyze her gait back and forth, make sure that she's into the things that we want. That because you can very easily adapt your body to very bad patterns also, right? We want to do the things right. But you can see there, if I have someone that wants the minimum, I have at my disposal some kettlebell movements that can help that person, right? That are very basic. And they can do them with other tools. But as you mentioned, I think it's so much accessible. The portability of a kettlebell really is unique. You can put a kettlebell in your car and you can bring it with you. You can go to the park and things like that. Putting a bar or some dumbbells in your car may be a little bit more clunky. And then there is the physics of the kettlebell. That off-center of gravity creates a very special kind of load on the body. And there was an article a very long time ago. I should have shared this with you if I had known we were going to talk about this. But I will after the call. Written by Paul Chek. And so he had this really cool diagram about why kettlebells were superior to some of the other tools in the way that they challenged the body. And it all had to do with that off-center of gravity. Because to mention one of my good buddies who's up in LA, Roger Parks, he's been talking a lot about how one of the challenges of kettlebells is that they try to rotate away from you. And this creates a different dynamic that it's good. We want those challenges in our movement because so many things in life are like that. They're not perfect. I'm not going to sit there and press this thing perfectly left and right. So it really lends itself to a wide variety, a lot of different groups, different people with different needs, but also it's the simplicity of it. You don't need a bunch of kettlebells. You can have one or two kettlebells that can serve a lot of different purposes.
Right. And so you mentioned just in those comments of how you integrate other modalities and other strategies based on who you're working with, something that's referred to as Z Health. We talked about gait mechanics, vestibular training, breath work. Can you talk about this system? Is this something that you've patched together and formed through your own experience, or is this something that's kind of taught as a system working together?
No, this is the education that I've gotten from different parts. But the core of what I do really is hardstyle kettlebells, right? What Strong First teaches. And then as a second unit there, it's going to be the integration of the Z Health system. So it's this neurological way to look at movement. The two of those coming together is really at the core of what I do and what I teach. But then there's also, you mentioned functional training. I have a certification through the Certified Functional Strength Coach. That is through Mike Boyle in the East Coast. Oh, yeah. The legendary coach, right? Like everybody. Yeah. I mean, that I loved that cert. I loved it. I loved going to it. It was so fun. I remember it was really funny because I thought it was going to be a 2-day event. And we finished the first day, and I'm like, what are we doing tomorrow? And they were like, that's it, bro. Go home. And I was so disappointed. Yeah. Because I wanted to do more. And to this day, I still hope that I get the chance to meet Mike Boyle one day because he's such an awesome example of what's possible. He's in his 60s. He still coaches every day. I want to be Mike Boyle when I grow up. You know what I mean? Yeah. And then most recently, I took a really cool certification called Gait Matters. And that one really delved very deeply into the gait mechanics more from a biomechanical standpoint, because in Z Health, we look at it more from a neurological standpoint, and bringing those two together has been such a powerful for me to kind of, okay, I get why that works that way now, you know? So that's been really good. And then another certification that I took recently that was really awesome is it was founded by this gentleman named John Rusin. He's a doctor of physical therapy. And it's called the Pain-Free Performance Specialist certification. And that one is, what I love about this cert, especially for young coaches, is that it pre-packages all of these very cool concepts that everybody needs right away, where some of the other certs are a little bit, you need some experience before you get into this, or else you're going to have some issues. And that one is just so user-friendly. So open it up, it's ready to go. You don't have to put anything together, you know? So in bringing all of those together, and I have a few others. I've taken some things. In fact, I'm going to take Animal Flow next month here in San Diego.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm a education junkie. I'm always looking for things to go learn and do because it's never over. The moment you sit down and go, okay, I'll figure it all out, I got it. That's the moment that things are in bad shape for you.
Right. Yes. And then breath work. So how has that been brought into your practice?
Breath work, I think that the original seed was through martial arts. Okay. And I did a lot of boxing, a lot about training. When you're doing these sports that require you to perform, going back to that conditioning idea, yeah, you can be strong, but how's your conditioning? How's your engine? Can you run for a long time? You got to start to figure some things out about breath, right? So you start to ask questions, and it's all more anecdotal. You learn along the way. But then when I got to Z, that's when I started to learn more about the neurology of breathing and how it impacts certain things. Most recently, I took some courses because I'm going to grad school to get a master's in kinesiology, physiology, right? Gas exchange, how through the body, how the heart pumps, all of these things, right? So you start to get a little bit more acquainted with how these things work at a molecular level, but also globally, and how that can impact your performance. And it's inevitable. Again, and this is the beauty of continuing to learn, is that if you keep learning, you're going to keep finding doors to open and walk into and be like, oh, wow, look at all this cool stuff in here. And that's how I feel about that.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's so nice when they complement each other like this. So each situation that arises with your clients, I'm sure, has different things you got to pull from to make it work. So it's great. So back to kettlebells. So what kettlebell movement do you feel like is the one that everybody should master?
The Turkish get up.
Yeah.
I love it, man. It's so unique. It's very hard to do that with any other tool with that level of efficiency. And it was meant to be kind of thing, right? So let me break it down. So you start at a supine position, right? On the floor. And you have to safely pick up the bell and proceed to get up. I started working with kettlebells in 2005. Since then, the trajectory of how we teach, what we consider a good get up, the variety of versions that are out there, it's enormous. There's so much to play with. Shoulder health, shoulder mobility, shoulder strength. The Turkish get up is what's considered a static press. So it'd be similar to locking an object overhead and walking with it. That's just a very popular thing to do in today's physical therapy and training world. People that are a little bit more progressive, they're having their clients walk across the gym with something locked overhead. That's just love seeing this with young coaches because I know as an industry, we're moving in the right direction. The Turkish get-ups does that in so many unique positions. Now, that's just the upper body. Then what's happening with the center of the body, the core, something that's been recently called, I'm not sure if you heard this term yet, but they call it the pillar now. The pillar, yeah, I know. I love to see the evolution of the terminology over the years. It really challenges this part because if you're doing it incorrectly, it will speak to you. You will know immediately. That doesn't feel right. And then you have the lower body. What's happening there? We can go from the hip all the way down to your feet in how it's challenged, how it's progressed. There are very few movements that are going to give you. This is why the Turkish get-up, if I had to pick 5 exercises and take them to an island, okay, it would be the only kettlebell exercise that I would take. And people are like, oh, no, you wouldn't take a ballistic? You wouldn't take a swing? I wouldn't. I can get lost in 15 or 20 minutes of just doing alternating get-up side and side and feel like peaceful, man. And when I'm done, I'm just like, this feels great. And I just go about my day. It's amazing. The meditative aspect of this movement, the shoulder health, the hip health, the core health. Man, it's everything.
It's got it all. Yeah. Yeah. It's really, I'm sure this is things that you cover in your books, but it's really interesting when you break that movement down bit by bit and you don't see it as necessarily in the beginning, see it as a whole thing. You see it as these unique parts, and mastering each part one at a time is really the way to do it.
And boy do we. Turkish get up is taught in our first workshop, the Kettlebell 101 workshop that we teach through Strong First. Is Turkish get-ups and swings. That's the basic thing. And we have other things in there that we need to use in order to build people up, whatever. But that's really the meat and potatoes of it. And when you talk about breaking it down, my goodness. And then if you go to be certified during the weekend and you get 3-day certification, we really break the Turkish get up down. And I am so proud of that because there's so much to be. You got to stop me talking about get ups because I'll just keep going forever. But it's such a valuable tool, a valuable movement, and yeah, it deserves all the attention it gets in our workshops and our certifications.
Yeah. Good for grandma too, eventually, right?
Absolutely, dude.
All right. This has been really enjoyable. I'd like to spend the rest of our time together just hearing about your upcoming book, The Iron Core in 4 Chambers, and what that's all about, and hear about your workshops and just how people can get connected with you, and any parting words that you'd like to share.
Thank you. This has been very enjoyable. Super stoked to be here. Thank you for being interested in what I do and just being a promoter of the system. I know you mentioned that you had done it. You were an early adopter, so we were running the same circles early on, and we didn't even know it. The books, my goal with the books is to pick a single subject or something very simple and break it down as much as I can, and try to give the people that read it the philosophy behind what we do. So, for example, the one that I have out now is the one-arm push-up book, all right? And I call them pamphlets, right? Because this is a single subject. But then you go in there and you learn that if you remember nothing else from this book, remember this. Remember that upper combination of posture with the appropriate level of breath control and support produces pain-free, high-performing movement. Remember that, right? Now, you may read that and go, whatever. But if you keep going down this path and learning and going to certs and learning from different people, I'm pretty sure that down the line, you're going to find yourself going, man, he was right. You start to talk about the neurology of movement. What are the elements of efficiency? Why should you favor form over load, right? Why should you prefer to have really good technique versus can do it kind of, right? How do we train for longevity? What does that look like? This philosophy of, hey, take it easy. Let's pull back a little bit. Let's do what we can. The books are only a single subject, but in reality, there's a lot more meat there that you can kind of pull from and apply to not just that movement, but other things as well. My next book is going to be on bottoms up pressing with the kettlebell. Really excited about that one because that's, to me, it's such a cool move. And again, a lot of utility in it. There's a lot of things that need to be happening in order for you to properly press a kettlebell overhead, bottoms up. And the magic will be in that. The bottoms up, it is what it is. But what needs to happen, what are the conditions that need to occur for that to happen safely and efficiently? That's what the book will really be about. And then, of course, we have our workshops. We have 5 of them coming up. Starting in August, we have Kettlebell 101. And then every month, we'll be adding one new one. Now, Strong First just released a new curriculum for their workshops. And there are 2 workshops that have never been taught in California. It's Kettlebell 401 and 501. Those will be happening in November and December in La Jolla, California here. I have a great team with me of instructors that are going to come and help me out. I have a lot of people already signed up. That's going to be super fun.
Excellent. And then do you have, beyond the one-arm press book, do you have any other books coming out?
Not immediately. The plan is to eventually take all of these individual pamphlets and put them all into a big book, and that will be Iron Core and the 4 Chambers that embodies,
Gotcha.
your body weight training, your kettlebell training, your barbell training, and how to bring it all together, right? That's the idea behind the 4 Chambers. But for now, it's all about distilling the information into single subjects that are more digestible, and then, boom, bring them all together into a big Bible style.
Okay. I have one more question, and then I'd love to hear some parting words from you. Does anybody you know have more energy than you?
Oh, man, thank you for that. Sadly, some people don't like it. They're like, dude, you got to tune it down. You're too loud. You're too loud.
Wow. Yeah. Well, I guess that answers the question.
I think that, hey, this is why I was the right guy to be in front of the group, I think, right?
Exactly.
From a young age.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. So anything you'd like to leave us with? This has been fabulous. And again, thank you.
No, I just want to thank you for having me on, and just remember, fitness should be part of your life forever. It shouldn't be a thing that you do just now. With that in mind, don't rush it. Take your time, spread it out. Just make it so that it's more digestible. Fitness should serve you. You're not here to serve fitness, right? So if you need to do less, do that. Enjoy your life. Do the things that you need to do, but keep it as part of the rotation. Don't just completely let it go, right? Because then we get to be 60 or 70 and we're lamenting the fact that we didn't invest more into this very valuable resource that we had, that is our physical health.
It's excellent. Yeah, it's a great message for these times. People are overwhelmed with so much, and people are understanding more and more that we got to take care of these bodhisattvas to live long and healthy. So thank you for elevating this in a way that it feels achievable. So thank you for your time, Andy. Look forward to connecting with you down the road as well.
Thank you, Adam.
If today's conversation with Oz Aponte inspired you to rethink strength, discipline, and longevity in training, don't let it stop here. Check out his workshops and resources at Bird Rock Fit in La Jolla or through Strong First events across the Western United States. I'll drop the links in the show notes so you can connect directly with him. And if you enjoyed this episode, the best way to support the show is simple. Share it with a friend who's into fitness or needs some motivation to get moving. You can also leave a quick rating and review wherever you listen. It helps more people discover conversations like this one. Most importantly, one insight you heard today, maybe leaving one rep in the tank, maybe trying the Turkish get-up, and put it to practice this week. Because as Oz reminds us, fitness should serve you, your life, not the other way around. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you next time.